What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Weekend Roundup here on Touchline Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content going up on the channel. A couple things to cover here today pretty quickly. First, U.S. men's national team finishes off the group stage of the Gold Cup with a 2-1 win over Haiti. I've talked about most of the bigger picture stuff here. There is not that much to learn in the group stage of this tournament. However, it was incredibly important that this team did what it was supposed to do because it had not been doing what it was supposed to do. And this was another good performance. Scoreline doesn't necessarily indicate how the game went. This easily could have been 3 or 4. Ball was in the back of the net a couple times. Had other opportunities. Malik Tillman, another really, really good game. That is a positive development. Again, does it really mean that much in the grand scheme of things? No. Now let's see if he can do it in the knockout stage and if he can be the focal point of this team winning the Gold Cup. Now we're talking about something different. But it was good to see Brennan Aronson get a goal involvement, setting up that Malik Tillman opener. You have a bad moment. I'll get to that in a second. They responded pretty well, got back on top of the game, ultimately got the winner, got the 3 points, kept the momentum going. That really is all there is to say about it in the bigger picture of what this means. This was always about the knockout stage. That is where we're actually going to gain some valuable data about this team. And so we'll see where things go from here. Now, the one notable moment in this game was the goal. And it seems like Matt Freese just completely mishit the ball. There was nothing particularly dangerous about what was going on, and then all of a sudden, there was an incredible amount of danger after the ball left Matt Freese's foot. It happens. It's one moment. It's also you would much rather have that than some kind of issue that actually needs to be fixed. Right? There's nothing to do to fix that. Players have bad moments. It's a mistake. He's not the first one that's happened to. I mean, Johnny Cardoso, earlier in this camp before the tournament started, had a moment like that too. You'd rather have that than something that actually is an issue that needs to be addressed. That being said, Matt Freese has walked into a glorious opportunity here with a manager who is very clearly prioritizing players who are actually getting on the field, and with a lot of the other MLS stalwarts having to leave this camp. And so he is getting all of these opportunities. Maybe this is completely irrelevant by the World Cup, and Matt Turner is starting consistently next season, and it's kind of a non-discussion who the number one goalkeeper is because he's the guy playing well in Europe. We are not at that point by any stretch of the imagination, though. And through no fault of Matt Freese, he just doesn't have very much to do in these games. A little bit more in the first game he started before the tournament began. But the group stage, the U.S. is doing what it's supposed to do and dominating possession, dominating games. You're not learning much about him. And so this becomes the moment you think about over these 3 games. Not because he's been bad at all, but just because he hasn't had much to do. And he makes one glaring mistake that leads to a goal. Does Pochettino care about it that much? No, probably not. But the situation Matt Freese finds himself in is it's not just trying to unseat Matt Turner. And we'll see who actually starts for this team in goal in the knockout stage. Because maybe Pochettino just decided, I know what I have in Turner. I'm just going to keep playing Matt Freese until we can actually get eliminated here because we got off to a good start. We feel good about our chances of winning these games. But it's not just Matt Turner. It's also the other MLS guys that I mentioned, the Zach Steffens, the Patrick Schultes, who aren't here. And so, for Matt Freese, I would argue, to make the World Cup roster, and maybe that's not entirely true, but definitely for him to be the number one goalkeeper. And we are a long way from that happening too. But he is the one playing in the last knockout, the last tournament before the World Cup. That has to mean something here. In order for him to get into this conversation, he probably had to be just about perfect because of the other guys who have established themselves and what Patrick Schulte has done to make his argument for being included as one of the top 30 goalkeepers. And that came to an end with that goal that the U.S. conceded today. Again, how much does Pochettino care? We're going to find out. How much does this tournament actually matter? We're going to find that out too, because we don't know. It could be that once this thing is over, if he's got everybody healthy, it's Turner, it's Stefan and and Schulte or something like that, and Freeze is just not even part of the conversation. But you can't just assume that, because what we have seen is that the guys who get into camps and perform well and impress Pochettino keep getting called back into camps. For better or worse, however you feel about it. That's the world we're living in. So that was the one takeaway today for me. I feel like that had the biggest ramifications, that we might have learned a little bit of something about the goalkeeper situation. No idea to know that. There's no way to know that for sure, though. We'll have to see what Pochettino decides moving forward, both for the rest of this tournament and in those camps leading up and the friendlies leading up to next summer's World Cup. Club World Cup also continuing as we're getting to the final games of the group stage, kind of setting the stage for that here. Lots happened this weekend. Not the most notable results in the world. The one thing I do want to say quickly, though, in order for this competition to catch on and become a legitimate thing that people care about and to come remotely close to realizing Gianni Infantino's vision, you need teams, fan bases to approach this with an incredibly high care level, investment, intensity, energy. You need people to care and to present the product in a way that shows people care about this. I say we've probably gotten more of that than I expected, but where have you have specifically gotten it from is the South American clubs and their fans. And they are having a tremendous time on and off the field in this tournament. Obviously, incredible soccer culture. I would argue it's the best in the world. Don't need to get in that conversation. But people in South America care about this. And not only that part of it, so obviously you're seeing the scenes in the stands and all of the fans and all of that. The teams are delivering on the field too. You take the 2 clubs from Argentina and the 4 from Brazil, they've lost 1 game. That was to Bayern Munich. It was a 1-goal game. PSG's gone down. Chelsea's gone down. You've got a bunch of teams at the top of their groups in position to go through to the knockout stage. There is no question who the winner of this thing has been so far. I would argue it's specifically the Brazilian clubs, but it is South America in general. Because those teams don't get an opportunity to prove themselves against the very, very best in the world, right? We know it's a high level. We know how many players come from these leagues and from these countries and then go to Europe and have tremendous success and become some of the best players in the world. But if you want to look at this positively in terms of what this tournament does, that's what it's all about, is that Flamengo gets to play Chelsea. And Botafogo gets to play PSG. That's the whole point of this. And so you get to prove yourself as a league when you consistently across the board are getting results like this. You're winning the games you're supposed to and getting results in games you're not supposed to be getting those results in. Going toe-to-toe, beating European competition. You have to change the way you view the club situation in Brazil and Argentina based off of this, because we have no point of reference, because you don't get these opportunities. That's why the tournament, for better or worse, was expanded. And so just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that, because that has been probably the coolest part of this for me so far. Is not only see these teams get this opportunity and these fan bases, get this opportunity to support their team in this kind of environment, but to then see them capitalize on it the way that they are has been really, really cool and quite impressive. Last thing, I do want to spend a couple minutes real quick talking about Florian Wirtz. He is officially a Liverpool player. Obviously, we all knew this was coming. It is not a surprise at all, but it is official now. And what I want to say about it is basically this. In the past, when Liverpool have gone on big spending sprees, thinking of two in particular, it was to rebuild their defense, Alisson, Virgil van Dijk, or back line, whatever you want to call it, but the defensive part of the game, right? New goalkeeper, new foundational center back. And it was to overhaul the midfield, the Gravenberch, McAllister, Szoboszlai acquisitions. Klopp felt like he needed to just reboot everything. He got the money to do that from FSG. Arne Slot didn't spend anything last summer outside of acquiring Federico Chiesa, who barely played, and got better performances out of all of these players, and was able to just provide a fresh voice. Whatever it was, obviously it worked, and he did a remarkable job and still isn't getting enough credit. So now he has all this money to play with and the benefit of having won the Premier League, having not spent any money, FSG having to back him because look what he just did. And there are exactly 0 holes that have to be filled. No, right back is not a hole that has to be filled either. Connor Bradley can do the job. Now, Slot may decide, I don't necessarily want that being option A, and they could probably use somebody else to play that position, which is why they went and got Jeremy Frimpong. But you are not buying Florian Wirtz because you need another attacking player. You're buying Florian Wirtz because Florian Wirtz is one of the most promising young players in the world, and he can be a foundational piece of your team for the next 10 years. This is much more on a Manchester City kind of thing or a Chelsea kind of thing than it is a Liverpool. Right? Liverpool usually are spending this money to make sure they're staying at the top and to fix a specific problem and address a shortcoming. Arne Slot just gets to go out and pick whoever he wants because he's got the money and there's no specific, I need to go fix this problem. And on top of that, the other interesting part of this for me that will be probably more of a talking point going into the season. He didn't necessarily pick guys, talking about Frimpong and Wirtz in particular, since those are going to be the 2 headline signings. It does sound like Milos Krkic is coming as well. He doesn't necessarily fit into this as much. But they're not necessarily natural 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1 guys. Wirtz can certainly play as your forward attacking midfielder in that system. But they're both coming from a 5-back system. Frimpong is not a right back. I will argue that forever. He is a wing back. And so it's going to be fascinating to see what Arne Slot actually wants to do now that he is getting to choose some of his players. That was the whole point of this summer is, okay, you let him get adjusted, and then you start bringing in his players. Except the adjustment was winning the Premier League and looking like one of the best teams in the world all season. And so now we're going to see what he actually wants to do and what the vision was from the beginning. Is it to stick with this 4-3-3? Is Frimpong going to play right back and Wirtz going to sit with, in front of McAllister and Gravenberch? Is that what's going to happen? Maybe it is. And they can certainly do that. But it also gives him an option to do something completely different if he wants to reorganize this and slowly restructure things. And maybe that was the system he went with because of the players he had, but that's not actually what he wants to do. It's just very interesting to me that this is the benefit of overachieving, is that now You get to spend all this money, and you have no specific things you need to spend it on, so you can go get whoever you want. And Arne Slot has chosen to go get players who are not, I would argue, natural one-for-one kind of pieces that fit into this puzzle the way it was constructed last season. They certainly can be, but it also gives him the option to do things to provide some different looks, and they're both also versatile players. Frimpong can play up and down the right side. Wirtz can play practically anywhere in the attacking half of the field. Midfield, false nine, winger. So we're going to see what this actually looks like and what the idea is. But these are luxury signings, and that's not something you usually get to say about Liverpool. Obviously, FSG come under a lot of criticism for the lack of spending. And when they do spend, it's usually because there's an acknowledgement that to stay at the top, we need to do this. That's not what we're talking about here. This is the ultimate spending from a position of luxury and leverage. You just get to add Florian Wirtz because you have the money to do it and he wants to come because of what happened last season. So, does it mean they're going to win again next season? No. But I really do find this really fascinating, and I feel like we're not necessarily talking about kind of the bigger picture and what this actually means that Liverpool have went and spent this money on these players, and the fact that they can go spend all of this money however Arne Slot so chooses, because there is nothing that they actually have to do this summer because they dramatically overachieved last season and blew everybody's expectations away. That is all for this edition of the Weekend Roundup. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. I'll see you next time.